Alright, I wanted to make another video. Warning, this is like probably not something you should give two shits about unless you play a lot of PvP. It's about weapon stats and what they affect and what you should probably look for. And it's kind of going down a lot of rabbit holes that aren't necessarily that important. And it's certainly not important for me because I'm not good enough for it to matter, but it's still something I try to optimize because I can't get any better, so I'm going to optimize my weapons as much as possible. Okay, so basically we're looking at this igneous hammer, and again, like, impact doesn't matter because that's always going to be the same across whatever weapon class you're using. Range matters a lot. And that's generally the stat I usually care about the most. And you can actually get to max range in some cases. So what range is it basically affects the damage fall off when you're shooting something. So there will be up to a certain range that you'll do 100% of the damage every time you hit a bullet. And then if you go beyond that range, there will be fall off. So you'll be doing less and less damage. So obviously you want weapons with bigger range so that you have longer damage fall off. And honestly, I don't really know the values, but I know like a bunch of YouTubers will talk about like, oh, this weapon has a damage fall off at 30 meters or 40 meters or whatever. I don't know those numbers, but I generally just try to boost the range as much as possible. The next thing, which is harder to quantify, I think, the next two really are harder to quantify, but it affects the feeling of the weapon a great deal. So stability. I'm going to show you what it looks like when I shoot this gun with just like boosted the stability as much as I can with the perks that I have. So 47 stability, right? If I were to aim and just like, I'm not doing any downward tension on the cursor at all. I'm just like letting the kickback do what it's going to do. And you can see, like, as I shoot, obviously there's kickback and the weapon sort of trails upwards. And then obviously if I do put some downward tension and like try to control the cursor a little bit, it stays more centered. Then if I were to completely tank the stability stat, go down from, what was it, 47 to 25, and then do the same exact thing, you can see the difference. So you see how much it kicks back, and my bullets go crazy up, rather than before it was kind of like around here, right? So just that little bit of stability is making it so the kickback on the weapon is way less. There are perks that can sort of mitigate that, like Zen Moment is something that'll reduce recoil, but yeah, stability is very important. Let's see, I was using this in the past because I like that extra bit of range, but now I'm actually curious, how does like that 5 stability even affect things? It's like somewhat noticeable. Anyways, stability, or sorry, that's stability. I'm gonna go back to this just because I like range. Handling is the next thing. Handling affects, I think it affects the time it takes to stow and ready a weapon, and also the time it takes to aim down sights, I believe. So basically, if I have high handling, you can switch between weapons quicker. So that's why on things like shotguns, you want lots of handling, so that someone's rushing you, you're shooting, whatever, someone's rushing you, you switch to a shotgun real fast and shoot, right? That's even harder to quantify for me. So it's kind of like I really care about range and stability a lot, and then handling is further down the list. Now you'll also notice when I was shooting that igneous hammer, it was when I wasn't controlling for recoil, it was sort of trailing off to the left, and I'm pretty sure that's because of the recoil direction. And it'll become a lot more obvious when I start using this pulse rifle, this blast furnace. So now in the game, in the past this wasn't the case, there's a thing called deterministic recoil. So the recoil of a gun is always going to be the same depending on what recoil direction stat you have for that gun. In the past, I think it was more randomized, but I think for a healthy competitive scene, having like set recoil patterns is actually very important. So if I were to go with the base recoil direction of 65, and this is why this stat is so fucking, it's actually kind of stupid, but it's something you really have to test yourself. So I'm not going to put any tension on the cursor. I'm just going to shoot over and over, and you can see what the recoil looks like. And with base recoil, this weapon is actually pretty fucking good. It's not really trailing in anyone. It's maybe a little bit to the left, but not really. This is where it gets tricky. If I choose a perk that boosts that from 65 to 75, and then let's say I put on a counterbalance stock, which boosts that to 90, let's see what the recoil looks like now. Trailing way more over to the left. Before, it was kind of grouped all in this area. Now it's trailing over to the left, despite having a better recoil stat. So this is the type of thing that you have to either look up online what the recoil patterns are, or just test for yourself. So I generally, for this gun, I'm just going to have... Actually, so I was playing with this last night. I was trying to figure out what I wanted. So this gun I actually do have max range on. But I have to decide, do I want a better recoil pattern of 65 versus 75, or do I care about having like 10 more stability? I don't know. I got to play with it some more. Maybe if I were to use Zen Moment instead of Head Seeker on this, I wouldn't care as much about stability, and I could just punt it and only care about the recoil pattern. But yeah, I have a bunch of rolls of this gun. It's a good PvP gun, and I was trying it a bunch last night in Iron Banner. What else? Another, I don't know if I should, I guess I'll just jump into this video because no one's going to watch it anyways because it's super nerdy and pointless. But another thing that is a really weird interaction in the game is the blast radius statistic. So grenade launchers and rocket launchers have this statistic called blast radius. And it's basically, I mean, it's self-explanatory, right? It's the radius at which you're going to be doing damage when something explodes. For rocket launchers, it'll have the same amount of damage in the entire blast radius, I think. But regardless, you can boost the blast radius as much as you want on grenade launchers, or on rocket launchers. For grenade launchers,
seconds remain.
You actually want a lower blast radius stat if you're using it for boss damage. Because what'll happen is your direct hit damage with the gun is going to be less if the blast radius is higher, but it'll do more to the surrounding enemies.
10 seconds.
So very kind of counterintuitive, but blast radius on grenade launchers you want lower if you're using the grenade launcher to
is all I ask.
To do boss damage, which often I do. So for example, this Edge Transit is really, really good for boss damage. It's like probably the best boss damage weapon in the game at the moment. And yeah, I'm specifically using this thing called mini frags to decrease the blast radius. I am specifically not using this because it increases blast radius. This increases blast radius. I don't want it. And the other thing about these is they can roll with a masterwork blast radius. This I already upgraded. It did not have a masterwork of blast radius. And that can be really fucking annoying because your DPS literally will go down despite the fact that you are increasing a stat that sounds like it's something you should increase. So Mountaintop is another example. This one is not ruined, but it's a lot less effective because the stupid blast radius stat was masterworked. But I really wanted to be able to improve these two perks, so I had to fucking masterwork it and get plus 10 blast radius and reduce my DPS. Yeah, and that's specifically why I have this selected, Implosion Rounds, because it decreases my blast radius. In this case, maybe I would just use Spike Grenades because it'll do increased damage on direct hits. I would have to test it a little bit more because I'm only really gaining 5 blast radius. I would imagine that's actually probably the case. Anyways, I've drawn out for way long enough. Weapon stats, there you go.